Oh.
No minor. Morning. Morning. How are you? Good.
Are we ready? All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order. It's 8:32 and the Public Safety Committee meeting now is in order. Madam Clerk, are we in compliance with the open meetings law?
Yes, we are.
I'm going to do roll call because we have people who are may be calling in. So Helen Dennis.
Here.
Dale Schlueter. Here. Ron Buckholz.
Present.
Chuck Van Etten.
Yes, he is here.
Chuck, are you here?
He was there and now he's not.
Chuck, if you can hear me, whenever you get a chance to address the committee, just let me know that you're here. You got to do that for attendance. All right, for everybody else, if you're a guest, I need you to sign in. Or if you're not a committee member, I need you to sign in on that roster that's being circulated. Anybody not get it?
Yeah, we got it already in this side.
Next, we have a meeting agenda. The agenda has been posted. Do we have any changes to the agenda that the committee wishes to consider? If not, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chair, to approve the agenda as presented.
I have a motion by Mr. Buckholz, second by Mr. Schlueter. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is public comments. Public comments is an opportunity for anybody who's not on the agenda to discuss anything that they wish on the agenda. And you have 3 minutes. So anybody who wishes to address. Moving on, we have the minutes.
Good morning, Linda Zilmer.
Okay.
I'm wondering if people there are aware of the situation in the Chippewa County Courthouse where their operations have been drastically complicated by potential spread of COVID. And when I was in the county building last week, I noticed that employees are no longer wearing masks. And I'm just wondering if in future discussion, if county employees shouldn't return to wearing masks when working to help protect themselves and others. And the second item I'd like to address this morning is it seems like there's an increasing number of resolutions that are coming before committees without the public really being aware of what they are or having had time to have input. And when the county acts then to possibly pass a resolution as reflecting the will of the county, I don't know that it really reflects all your constituency. So I'm hoping there's more of a public process to be able to look at these resolutions and weigh in on whether the public really supports them or not. Thank you.
Anybody else who wishes to address the committee? Chuck, can you indicate that you're present for the meeting?
I am present for the meeting.
Thank you, sir. All right. Any other public comments? Hearing none, moving on to the minutes. Has the committee members had a chance to see the minutes? Ms. Dennis?
Motion to approve.
Motion for Ms. Dennis to approve the minutes.
Second.
I have a second for Mr. Buckholz. All in favor of approving the minutes as presented indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, moving on. Now we have a resolution for consideration and possible action. Last month we had an amendment or a resolution regarding the Second Amendment under the federal Constitution and was it Article 1, Section 25 of the state Constitution regarding the right for citizens of the county to bear arms, and then also the concern about any kind of legislation that would infringe on that. And so there are people here who wish to address that. We can go in order. So if you want, anybody who wants to, raise your hand if you want to speak on the issue. I know you do. So So I'm just trying to figure out an order so everyone has a chance to speak to it. We have a draft, so we received the draft from Bill, because I forgot your last name and I don't mean to be informal. We have a draft from Bill and we ran it through our legal department, so we wanted to clarify that. And so if that remains consistent with what you want, then we can do that. If there's changes in here that you want to discuss, we're ready to do that. And then from there, we can discuss how the committee wants to do this. The process would be, is the resolution is in public safety, but for a resolution to be approved, it needs to go in front of the full board. So the vote that would happen today would be to send it to the full board for full consideration. Bill, you have the floor.
So I just sent some more information to you that 10 other counties already have approved this type of resolution, and 37 other counties have been submitted, including Sawyer County. So that's actually all I want to say. And I did review the county's version now, and I see nothing wrong with it.
Okay. Anybody?
Well, I'm the same way. I introduced myself. I'm Fred Briggs.
Okay.
And I'm fairly new here, and I had actually started the resolution before I met Bill.
Okay.
And so we do have quite a bit of support out there. I mean, I have a group that I started on Facebook, and right now there's 955. Basically, out of that, I'm going to say 750 or so are county residents. And I do have some petitions out if we need them that would support, citizens' signatures. And otherwise, yeah, I just read this and we're supporting Bill with our group because we were going to submit our own.
So have you guys had, I know this is fast, right? So,
Yes, we didn't get a chance to see the revised edition.
right.
Uh,
So what I can do is I can go through a little bit of what, because I made some of the edits myself.
Okay.
And first thing I want to tell you is I'm in support of this resolution. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to make sure that it was in line with what we want from Sawyer County. And so there's a couple things in there. Because I'm a lawyer, there's a lot of language in here that I was not like totally uncomfortable with. When we say people, we the people is a declaration of independence, and a lot of people draw their knowledge from that. Well, that was before the Constitution was adopted. When we do a county resolution, we can only represent the people who are the citizens of the county. Those are the ones who vote. And so I tried to keep people in there as much as I could, but I wanted to make sure that we're recognizing and we're representing the citizens of Sawyer County. And so that's where you see people and then citizens. Because the one thing that I want to be very specific about is our Second Amendment belongs to citizens of the county, citizens of the state of Wisconsin, and citizens of this country. That's why we have the federal amendment, and then we also have a state right to bear arms. That's why I have that in there. The second one I wanted to make sure in there was, and don't read into this anything more, but I think our law enforcement has been under a lot of scrutiny for these last couple of months, and I didn't want anything in there telling them how to do their job. And so I spoke with the sheriff about what this resolution was, and the sheriff has, and I told him directly, and I told him, and this committee also stands with that too, and I don't want to speak for the individual members, especially for Mr. Van Etten, but I commend the sheriff for the job that he does. And I trust him and his deputies to conduct themselves appropriately, to enforce the laws that are necessary, and to conduct themselves with respect and representing our interests. And so I did not want to put anything in there that made it look like that we questioned their authority, that we wanted to change the method and how they did things. And so I don't want to be passing a resolution that tells them how to do their job. And so you'll see the language in there saying that we support the sheriff and his deputies. That's the language that I put in there. And then the last one was just making sure that we had consistent language across there that was going in front of the public safety meeting, that was going in front of the full board on the 16th. So there was some edited parts in there. So if you have a chance, I'm not going to speak for I'm going to give the committee members a chance to address the resolution as it is, because it's been circulated for some revisions. Our legal counsel is available if there's any other specific questions that people want. But I changed also the title so that the resolution is specific, and it says it's a resolution. Someone got it somewhere.
Let me see.
I got it. A resolution to affirm Sawyer County's commitment to Second Amendment there's a typo, to the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution and the right to bear arms under the Wisconsin Constitution. So is there any concern about that language? And here's the thing about this, right? So you've got a movement, you got a lot of people, so they have a lot of expectations. And so I want you to know that you have this kick at the can, and then you also have a chance at the full county board. If you go back and people want, we like citizens, we like residents, we like, left-handed people, right-handed people, whatever you guys want to, however you guys want to modify that, you still have a chance to address that at the full county board, which is going to be on the 16th of July at 6:30 or something. So I'm gonna go, I got the committee members first, and then I'm gonna go to you. Ms. Dennis.
I was going to make a motion to approve this resolution and forward it on to the full county board.
Second.
I have a second for Mr. Buckholz. In discussion, sir, you have the floor.
Okay. No, I just have one question that'll probably come up, is the fact of the funding for anything unconstitutional.
Funding?
Well, I don't know, Bill's got it too, I think, in there. But it's basically, I'm trying to find it right here. Basically, legal action of power or appropriating the public funds.
Which paragraph are you reading from?
Yeah, Bill, do you have it right there? 'Cause I can't. I got mine, which is supposed to Bill.
Be it further resolved that Sawyer County Board will not appropriate any funds for any enforcement of unconstitutional laws. So I got a feeling that the lawyer's gonna be chiming in here a little bit. One, Sawyer County doesn't have a lot of money to begin with, and so, the second one is, I'd be hesitant to have something that is overly broad, so we're not gonna appropriate any funds that's for anything unconstitutional. The only real body that can determine if something's constitutional is either the Supreme Court of Wisconsin or the United States Supreme Court. So we don't want to be making a decision that we're not going to take funds to do something before there's a chance for the other branches of government to do that. We only have a limited delegated authority from the state of Wisconsin for the purposes of providing oversight to the county operations. And so what we can do is making sure that, when the sheriff comes in and reports things that, we got this going on, or we're going, and if you guys stay all day, you're gonna hear him, if you stay for the whole meeting, you're gonna hear him give a report on what the operations for the county are. Our budgetary process is very, very limited, not just on the amount of funds, but the method and how we do things. So it's not so much we fund the operations, but that comes from the direction from the state. And so there'll be more chances to work about how funds are appropriated way before it comes to the county level.
Okay.
And so that would be my only concern. And I don't want to put any limitations. We already have enough limitations on us. So I mean, if you want that incorporated, you guys can come to the full board and you can bring it up, because we actually have a finance committee that would probably want to speak to that specifically. And then you could, see if that can come in place. Because I mean, the purpose is that you don't want the government using money to interfere with our constitutional rights. And so there's other ways of addressing that than just having a county resolution going forward. So, but if you think that's necessary, I'm not going to stop you from having that incorporated.
I'll have to discuss it with our group.
Yep. Anybody else have any comments? Any comments? No? All right, hearing none, we have a motion on the floor to accept, Mr. Schluter.
This comments from the community now?
Yeah.
Yeah. I have several.
Okay,
First of all, I have sworn to support the Constitution of this country every time I've been elected to the Sawyer County Board of Supervisors. That has not changed, and that will not change. Having said that, I have some questions about this, about what it will accomplish. We have the Second Amendment. We are a state that protects our rights to bear arms. What is it that the members of this group expect to gain from this resolution? Specifically, what is the definition of a sanctuary county? Legal definition.
What is it? I have it at home, I'm sure, because I had a lot of people ask me. I had the actual.
Is our attorney,
Yes.
can I ask her what the legal definition is?
Rebecca, are you on the line?
I am.
So Mr. Schleter has a question regarding the legal definition of what a sanctuary county is.
Right now, legal sanctuary, whether it be a county or other municipality, is not defined in the statutes. So I think it is a matter of how the county or their governmental units wants to define that term. And I think you would do that within the context of a resolution, adopting yourself as a sanctuary county. Certainly a resolution, though, regardless of how you define it in your resolution, it should not legally be inconsistent with constitutional or other state law.
So it should neither increase nor decrease the meaning of the Second Amendment.
Correct.
Okay.
What happens if this resolution fails? Does anything change as far as our Second Amendment rights in this county and anywhere being already protected by our Constitution? Anybody? What's going to change if it doesn't pass?
So, well, without getting too much into the nuts and bolts of this, I think what this does, and the reason why, I guess why I support it, is that it's an affirmation of, it's a declaration that we support the right to bear arms and to have the ability to exercise those rights in the methods that's the way it was contemplated. It's supposed to protect yourself, your property, your family, and a county resolution it's binding in terms of what the will of the board is, what the will of the committee is. And I think we have a responsibility to represent that publicly. And so, it's not a fluff resolution. It's an affirmation. It's a rededication to the principles of what the amendment is supposed to, what it represents. I'm a former Marine, and I took an oath when I signed up. And if you ask any other Marine, our oath doesn't expire. There's no expiration date. And so personally, I don't need a resolution. I don't need an amendment to tell me for me to protect my family or my property. But if I could join with other people who have the same values, then I agree with them. You know, we may not always agree. He's going to be pissed off about wearing a mask all day, but I'm still going to support his right to bear arms. You know, there's other people in here are going to, you know, they're going to vote one way or another when it comes to elections, but we're all American citizens and we all have a right to defend our way of life and have those principles reaffirmed. And so that's what I see in this resolution. And that's what I wrote into this when I put it forward. I don't want to denigrate. I don't want to tell the sheriff's department what to do, but I appreciate the work that they do because I rely on them to make my county safe. And they, as best as they can. I mean, there's circumstances that come up and we got protests all over, and whether people believe that's justified or not, that's a conversation that needs to happen because we are all equal citizens under the eyes of the law and to me under the eyes of God. So this resolution speaks to that.
Chuck would like to speak.
Oh, Chuck, Mr. Van Etten, you have the floor.
I'd like to go a little bit further on this. Basically what I see in this is, it's like somebody said that every time you're elected, you take the oath. And also being a former Marine, I understand exactly what we're saying. And united, we are saying this is where we stand. Nothing has changed. We all have a commitment to move forward. And this is what we believe in as an entity moving forward. So with the environment that is going on around us right now, very small percentage of the population, squeakiest wheel gets the most oil. Basically what we're saying is this is where we're at. we make a stand, we're moving forward. We support the Constitution, we support the Sheriff's Department, we support any entity that is in law enforcement, and there is no waiver on this. So basically, that's where I stand on this.
We have a motion on the floor.
Yeah, that's inarguable, of course, what you said, what Chuck said. I feel better about this, that the resolution was to support the Constitution of the United States. It bothers me a little bit that we're picking and choosing what parts we want to emphasize. We should emphasize all of them and support all of them. Well, we do, as sort of county board of supervisors. It also bothers me a little bit when you start individually defining what that means, because then you can get lost in the bushes. And things that you support today can come back to bite you in the future by a misinterpretation of what was specifically in this resolution. If it's appropriate, also, I would like to hear the sheriff comments on this.
Sheriff?
I have no problems or issues with the resolution. It just supports the Constitution, which I support, took an oath to support. So I have no issues with this resolution.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments about the discussion or the questions Mr. Schluter has posed to the committee? Last call for any comments or questions on the resolution. The resolution is to advance this resolution to the full board for consideration at the July 16th meeting. All in favor of that resolution indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Any abstentions?
Yes.
Chuck, did you vote?
I did.
You mind repeating it?
Aye.
Sorry. If there's any consolation, I was told, don't wear a mask, you should just wear a full bag over me. All right, so that resolution, that motion passes, and the resolution will be advanced to the full county board for that consideration at the next county board meeting. Moving on to the next item, second courtroom options, including Fifth Street discussion and possible actions. The committee members were forwarded some plans from our architect to discuss the potential courtroom expansion with the idea of a second courtroom, and with the options now being Fifth Street and connecting the jail or the deputy or the sheriff's department's office to the main building. Mr. Hoff, you have the floor.
Thank you. Before you is something that we talked a little bit about at the last county board meeting. That is the potential of closing the block of Fifth Street between the county courthouse and the jail sheriff's office. That's contingent upon city action. Obviously, the city is going to take a look at that issue on their meeting on July 13th, next Monday, I believe. So. They also want to extend California Avenue, which crosses county land. So that may be a way that we can swap some land between the city and the county to benefit both of us. Obviously, if Fifth Street was closed, that does open up the opportunity to build something across Fifth Street or the former Fifth Street area to connect a new courtroom not only to the existing courtroom, but to the jail and sheriff's office. In looking at some preliminary plans, and that's all we have at this point, is some preliminary thoughts on what that could look like, which is what you have on your in your packet. But it obviously creates some efficiencies that we only saw in that option 3 that we looked at previously. Option 3 was the one that built on that side of Fifth Street, which obviously solves the decades-old problem of transporting prisoners across a street out in the public. That was the option, $50 million price tag. I think that option had a lot of good features in it, but was very expensive. If we are allowed to vacate, if the city vacates Fifth Street, that does allow the county to consider the option of building that has a lot of the advantages of that option 3 at a much lower price tag. And we don't have any official price at this point. I think you can safely say that it's likely more than the other options that we considered, the option 2, that $4 to $5 million option that we tried to fit within the footprint of the building. And that was the last round that we looked at, just to turn every stone over and look at all the possibilities on what could happen, trying to do some of the things that need to happen without spending the $15 million. And we looked at several options within the courthouse, all of which, had some pluses and had some minuses. And, as we consider those against a Fifth Street option, I think it became apparent that this is a real viable option. And so we're kind of pending what the city does with that vacation of Fifth Street before we can actually move forward. But, for your consideration, you've got all those other plans that we've looked at previously. So if Fifth Street isn't vacated, we're left with those other options that we previously looked at. So you may want to discuss, those or talk about, this Fifth Street option and what it can do for us and what, whether you want to promote that or not. So I believe you can have discussion and we can answer questions as they come up.
All right, so any member of the committee want to address the options that are here? When you say you're looking for possible actions, what actions are you looking for?
Well, if you favor the Fifth Street option and wanted to let the city know that this is something that the county would like to do, and make a statement that that's something that you would like them to consider, I think that would carry some weight with the city.
So I'm going to open up the discussion for committee members first, and then if there's people in the audience or on the phone who wishes to address this, we'll get to that in a second. So, Mr. Van Etten, do you have anything you wish to add about the courtroom discussion?
The same thing that I brought up to the full board. I just want a commitment that we are moving forward, whether we're doing plan 1, 2, B, 3, C, 4, does not make a difference to me. I came into this late because this has been going on for several years, and not once have I heard anybody, like we haven't had a full committee and or board say, yes, we are moving forward, or no, we're not. So to me, it doesn't matter what the plan is. I just want a commitment that we are moving forward, and we're not still, we could change this plan so many times, and each time it costs money to have a plan drawn up, contingency plan drawn up, all the different numbers. And I think we're throwing good money after bad if we are not as an entity moving forward. So that's the only discussion I have. I really, it makes no difference to me at this time which plan. I just want confirmation that we are going to move forward.
Dennis.
I like the Fifth Street option. And I have no problem sending that, if this board agrees, this committee agrees, to the city, showing our support for that.
Mr. Schluter.
I also like this Fifth Street option, and I believe our resolution in 2017 was to move forward with this taking place. So that was before your time, Chuck, but there is a resolution to say that we are moving forward. I think this is a perfect solution to our situation. For Tom, do you think the city is ready to give us a yes or no on this next week?
That I can't speak for what the city
Just your.
is thinking, but they have it on their Public Works Committee meeting agenda on Monday, the 13th, and also the city council agenda. So I believe, they are seriously looking at it. What direction that goes, the city will have to decide. But also, if I may, to address Mr. Van Etten's points and Mr. Schluter's as well, the 2017 resolution that supported a Second Circuit Court and the financial commitment for that is what staff is working on as the direction from the board. And so we are proceeding under that direction, which has not been changed, and that we're proceeding with developing the plan for the courtroom. Now, we've had some other options, and the reason we don't have, a better estimate of cost is because we didn't send that to Market and Johnson for cost analysis, because we are, let's not get the cart before the horse. So,
All right. Well, that was a horse or a donkey.
so we're not spending additional money until we get direction from the city on whether that's going to be an option or not for the Fifth Street. So, we're not throwing any more money at that at this time until we get that confirmation. To address, the commitment, it's still going to take a commitment from the full county board to fund the second courtroom. And so to do that, the initial plan is to, issue debt over, say, 20 years to do that. So that vote, and that does need to go to the county board as a resolution to adopt the issuance of debt, which takes a 3/4 vote of the board. So
2/3 vote.
2/3 on debt.
I thought it was 3/4.
I think it's 3/4 on debt. Anyway, it does take a more than a majority of the board members to commit to issuing debt. So that's, the next step of commitment that the board will be asked to do in relation to this project.
Do you need a motion to,
Jim?
Hold on one second. I got Mr. Buckholz and then Judge Yackel.
I'm in favor of the Fifth Street also. And if that's not gonna be the option, and then I think we're gonna need to stay with number 2 that we have decided before. My other problem with this is, though, it's gonna take a 3/4 board vote to approve this. And if that don't get passed, we put a lot of time and stuff into something that ain't gonna happen. That's one of my concerns.
Judge Yackel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This option that came up in the last month or so appears, and everyone agrees, it seems like that this is the answer to all of the problems. If you were going to build over in the existing footprint or on this part of the block, there were going to be problems. If you were going to build over attached to the jail, there were going to be problems. And then all of a sudden this thing fell in our lap, and I from my standpoint, and I hope the city is aware of it, and I intend to communicate to the city that this is the option that is going to best serve Sawyer County, the citizens of Sawyer County, the criminal justice system, the access for citizens to get into the court system. And with that idea of extending California Avenue, it takes away the decades old questions about closing down Fifth Street. It's the way to go. And I looked at both drawings, and they both are fantastic, and they both work well. And it's the final piece of the puzzle, which is making sure that we can get sheriff's deputies their protection when they are marching these prisoners over to the courtroom and to the court system. We finally have their protection in place, and that was a huge piece of it. I spoke to it last time, I think, when we voted on the 2A, I believe it was, and we just couldn't foot the bill for building across the street. Now this takes care of that. So I hope that we continue to move forward on it. Thank you.
Anybody else who wishes to address this issue, either on the phone or in the room?
I have a question. How is?
Can you just state your name for the record?
John Zarnecki, town of Hayward. I think I have an understanding of what that is, but how is that going to closing Fifth Street there how is that going to affect Sheriff Protek's response with that road closed? Is that going to add response time and create new challenges to the sheriff's department?
Sheriff?
No, especially with the California extension there. And we still are able to go down to 4th and cross, and you still got 63 no matter which side of the building we're on. So there's still, we have a good travel pattern.
Any other questions? Does that answer your question? Any other questions or comments for this?
Well, if I can just add, the security footprint for the courthouse itself though will be substantially increased by going to that plan. We talked before about our former clerk that had been murdered, and if that had occurred here, the response from the sheriff's department or the city, with it connected to the building, your fractions of time now are saved.
Right. So for those who didn't hear, it's the Lieutenant Rapinski indicated that with the connection from the deputies or the sheriff's department to the courtroom, that it increases the response time from all officers who would be present in the building to versus what it is now, which is crossing the street and looking both ways. Anything else? So the chair will entertain a motion regarding these plans. Ms. Dennis?
Motion.
Motion, what is your motion?
Motion that this committee let the city know that this is the best option for us. It's a win-win for both. And I guess that's what Mr. Hoff wanted, correct?
I'm here to give you information and you can make the decision on what you want to do.
Do I have a second to Ms. Dennis's motion? I have a second from Mr. Schleter.
Okay, for discussion.
Yep.
In addition to urging the city to support this swap, I think we need to specifically say that this committee supports the 5th Street location for the new courtroom.
So Ms. Dennis, would you agree with this wording for your motion?
I absolutely will agree.
So let me finish my sentence. So your motion is to recommend to the county board that the 5th Street option become the primary option for the second courthouse, and that support be also represented to the city of Hayward in their discussions on the land transfer. Does
Yes.
that help you, Mr. Hoff?
Yes.
Mr. Schleter, do you agree with that, the wording of that motion?
Yes.
Madam Clerk, do you have the wording of that motion?
She's still ready.
Okay, motion by Ms. Dennis, second by Schleter, to recommend to the county board and the city of Hayward the 5th Street option of closing 5th Street and
Extending California.
extending California. So the county has to give that land to the city, correct?
And the city gives the county to the land, so something. All right. Any other discussion on the motion?
Please read that again.
Recommend to the county board and the city of Hayward that we're in favor of the 5th Street option of building the courthouse on 5th Street option and extending California Avenue to Nyman.
So you agree with the wording?
I think that's-
Mr. Van Etten, do you have any questions on the motion that's on the floor?
I do not.
Any other discussion on the motion? Hearing no discussion, calling for the vote. All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
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 Got it. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. All right, moving on to number 8, the judge's report. Your Honor, do you have anything you wish to report to the committee?
No, I basically, any report I would have would be dealing with the second courtroom. So I've already said what I had to say. Thank you all.
Yep. Moving on to number 9, clerk of court. Madam Clerk, do you have anything to report?
Nothing more than what's in my written report.
Do we have any questions on the report submitted by the clerk of court? Hearing none, moving on. District Attorney's Office. District Attorney's not, is the District Attorney present? Hearing no report, moving on. Child support.
Child support is still working primarily from remote. We have someone in the office. Between the 3 staff, we rotate someone in the office approximately 32 hours a week. The information the state provides is only current through May, but our collections are higher than they were last year at this time. So it does not seem to be hindering us in any way from working remotely. I have not resumed doing genetic testing yet. I'm the one that does it for the county, and I'm just not comfortable doing that yet. And there's no one banging on the door for that at this time. And I'm just gonna continue to watch what's happening with the virus before we start to reschedule that.
Okay. Any questions for Ms. Okamoto? Hearing none, thank you for your report. Sheriff's report.
I'll go ahead and turn it over to the chief to start with and follow up with a few comments at the end.
I have the communication center report, call volume, the total number of calls is pretty consistent with last year, down a little. And our total calls for service is up just a little, so. We're starting to resume back to normal functions as law enforcement, so I expect that to go up a little bit.
Any questions for the chief deputy? Senator Pinsky?
The parole report is reflected in the call volumes. It's gaining traction again, as the chief mentioned, things are opening back up and it's causing our deputies to start moving again.
Any questions for the lieutenant? Lieutenant Johnson, you're up.
Well, I have my June report attached there. Guess echoing the same thing, numbers are slowly starting to increase from where they were. We are still at this point slightly lower than last year at this time, but I anticipate that it's probably going to be back up there soon. Other than the report that I submitted, I just want to add that Deputy Savannah Stanley, who has been on maternity leave since April, submitted her 2-week resignation last week. So her official last day will be July 9th.
All right. Any questions for our jail supervisor? Ms. Dennis?
With the committee's permission, I would like to make a few comments to the law enforcement. As you all know, today, Pat and I decided to support our law enforcement here in Sawyer County. We did not mean for this to become political, however, I guess it is. We just wanted it to be your day today and show you how much we care, we respect, and support law enforcement. I, like a lot of people prior to being on the county board, kind of took you for granted. You know, we see you and, oh no, there's a cop, blah, blah, blah. Since being on public safety, I've learned a lot. I understand now what you see, what you do. And when the ambulance was called for me a while back, I don't remember a lot about it, but the first person to respond and get me out of the vehicle was an officer. Not long later, I was hit from behind, and the first person to come to me and see if I was okay was that very same officer. Although I was in shock and pain, I didn't know who he was at the time, and he gave me that look, and I knew who he was. And that's something I won't forget. So we have planned today to support you, to acknowledge you, and tell you how much we appreciate everything that you do. Also, I was forwarded a letter from Senator Ron Johnson and asked to read it. So I will do that now. I have nothing but respect for the men and women who risk their lives to keep the rest of us safe. secure our communities, and protect our way of life. We have lost far too many law enforcement officers who have made the ultimate sacrifice and lost their lives in the line of duty. We mourn for each and every one and pray that their surviving family members can find some measure of peace and comfort in the heroism of their lost loved ones. We are at a dangerous crossroads. The legitimate concerns and protests that begun as a reaction to the reprehensible death of George Floyd have been hijacked by radicals who do not value the freedom we hold so dear. Instead of working together to form a more perfect union, their goal is to tear our country apart, to destroy it within. They have no solution. Look no further than the nation of Chaz, the anarchist enclave in Seattle, with its concrete borders, armed guards, and lawlessness. That is not a vision of liberty and self-governance. It is a prescription for anarchy and chaos. This is another moment of choosing. Will we descend down a path of growing lawlessness and destruction, erasing our history in a futile pursuit of socialism, utopia that history proves does not exist? Or do we come together, acknowledge our shortcomings, and work to help each citizen pursue and achieve the American dream? The answer is obvious and can only be achieved in communities that are safe and secure. Safety and security will not be possible if we defund law enforcement. That is a fool's choice. We are blessed to live in a nation founded on the belief that our Creator granted us the inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. America is not perfect, but it has always strived to become better. We have always relied on men and women in law enforcement to protect these liberties that made America the greatest nation in the history of mankind. Now more than ever, we need law enforcement to protect us and help hold this nation together. We sincerely thank the men and women in blue for the service and sacrifice. I'm done.
Well, who wants to follow that comment? Schluter.
Earlier this week, I received a phone call from a lady who said she was calling from Washington, D.C. And she was in touch with the White House and the Army and medicine. And that was work. But she wanted to know if I was Dale Sleeter on the Sawyer County Board. I said I was. And she said, why is your sheriff using military-grade hardware against an innocent man in winter who is mentally ill and is being watched by 3,000, then shoved up to 4,000 people on Facebook? I said, I don't do Facebook. Well, she said, he's killing them right now. I said, I doubt that. It was a little strange conversation. I would like to commend the sheriff and his department for the special SWAT team that went out to that situation, de-escalated it, and nobody was injured, and the successful arrest was made. Good job, guys.
Amen.
Good job. I could have gotten out of hand in a big hurry, and then instead of hearing about Minneapolis and North hearing about Sawyer County. Oh, by the way, on page 16 of the St. Paul Pioneer Press today, the news was that the sanctuary place in Seattle was taken care of yesterday. It's no longer there. Maybe we're moving forward.
Sure.
I just want to say, we're pretty blessed in this community. We have received a lot of positive feedback and expressed appreciation in our community for law enforcement. It is heartfelt and appreciated as well. Regarding your comments there about the phone call you received, he was released. He posted a bond, so he's been released out of jail. He was in jail on a $10,000 cash bond, but he did come to the jail this morning on his own to thank our staff for the way he was treated and things that happened afterwards. So I thought that was pretty complimentary. Sometimes not the positive things don't always surface, so I just wanted to share that as well. And we are blessed in our agency to have great staff.
It's proof that you guys did a great job that day.
Absolutely.
Sheriff, the floor is yours.
I have nothing further.
Animal control report. But the record reflects that the chair does miss our animal control officer from attending meetings and waits for the day that she can be back and participating again. Any questions about the report that she submitted? Hearing none, moving on. Coroner's report. Hearing nothing, moving on to emergency management report. Ms. Sanchez.
You have my report in front of you. I guess the only thing I just want to say is thank you for the proclamation honoring Mike's life. On the front page of the record today is an article also that spurred from that. So I just truly appreciate that and the support that I have received from many people throughout the county. Thank you.
Any questions about the emergency management report that's been submitted? Any questions regarding the specialist report? Moving on, Criminal Justice Coordinating Council update. The committee met on Monday. Was a limited agenda. We acknowledged the retirement of Diane McNamer, who retired as of Tuesday, and that position is being posted. And Mr. Hoff is in charge of the this interviewing and selection process for filling that position. The other thing that came out of that was a motion to review a submission from Justice Point in assisting in providing some of the to assistance in performing some of the duties that were performed by the position that Diane McNamer had held. Any questions regarding the CJCC? Moving on, ambulance.
So besides the submitted report, I don't have a whole lot. We did renew our service license for 2020, 2023. That has taken care of a lot of personal licenses have been taken care of with the state of Wisconsin and being renewed. We did transport our second confirmed COVID-19 patient, which was not confirmed until after we had completed that transport. And we have 2 crew members that are being tracked by public health currently because of that. And I believe they are off till July 2nd, and they'll be back on for work. We do have some training coming up, water rescue operations, like around Lake Fire. We're going to start working with them for some just water rescue in general, now that people are getting back out on the lake. Emergency vehicle operators course is going to be held in September, what dates we determine. So call numbers, we are starting to come back up slowly. We're starting to increase. June this year, June of last year has been the same for requests. We just had 10 more facilities that we did. And then besides that, North Memorial Air Care is going to be day based in here on every weekend during the day at the Hayward Airport while their siren base gets construction. So there'll be weekends, which will really help expedite their response time to flight. So, which is pretty exciting. And then the
So,
only
excuse me, they're what base?
day base, they'll be here during the day. They're gonna fly in during the day.
Siren base?
They're siren base, yes.
Oh,
They're doing
so-
construction.
okay.
Yep. So on the weekends, I think it's 9 to 5, they'll be here, and flying out of the Hayward Airport. Yep, and then, July 18th will be the open house. Tom, did you have any input on time?
I think we were looking at afternoon, a couple hours in the afternoon.
Anybody have any?
What is the plan? I mean, we're opening up to just have people come walking through, or what kind of protocols are you gonna have in place?
So I have to kind of have a conversation. I think Julia's been involved a little bit, but I have to have that conversation with her to see what we can actually do.
Is this a normal practice? Because I mean, this is the first time I've seen a building be built by the county, and then we open it up to the public. I mean, isn't it already open to the public? I mean, people can't just come and check it out. I mean, what's the purpose of an open house?
I was under the impression that this was kind of come up from Public Works, right? They wanted the open house.
All right, well, July 18th?
Yes. I was thinking.
Just so everyone knows, I won't be able to be there or at the county board meeting. I'll be out of town. So if I can do by telephone, I certainly will. As for the open house, I think we've had that in the past. And I think it's just to show the citizens where their money went.
Okay.
So, correct.
Yes.
It was just a question, not anything other than just wondering.
Oh, I'm just answering.
You'll know, no? Oh, okay. Anyway.
Okay,
Any other questions for Mr. Dunstan?
good job.
Moving on next is future agenda items. Is there anything else that the committee would like to have added to next month's agenda? Mr. Hoff.
Yeah, just to point out that from here on until we pass a budget, we'll be in budget discussion. So the departments are working on their department budgets here during July. Mike Keefe and I will be meeting with departments on their preliminary budgets, packaging those together. So as we get into August, September, we'll be talking a lot about where we're at with the budget and what we need to do about it. So be prepared to have some of those discussions. Obviously, as we talked about earlier, financial situation is very tight, and it gets tighter every year, and we've got to deal with it. So
Can we just add them a line just as budget on the agenda?
yes.
And if there's something to discuss, we'll do it. Not, we'll just move on. Anything else from the committee on future agenda items? Hearing none, moving on to number 18, correspondence reports from conferences, meetings, and other matters for discussion only. Is there anything else from the committee that you'd like to discuss? Mr. Bennett, do you have any questions or anything else you want to share?
I do not.
Ms. Dennis?
No.
Mr. Schluter? Mr. Buckle?
Yes, I do. Last Saturday, Friday and Saturday, in my township, we had some ATV problems down there. And I called the Sawyer County Sheriff's Department. They sent down deputies, and I want to commend them on a wonderful job that they did handling this, and their dispatcher. And being on this committee and county board and a town board chairman, I back you 100%. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank your deputies.
One final
Get a
thing
big head,
is
guys.
the committee held a special meeting on Monday for school bus safety. It was attended by the various school districts, the busing companies, law enforcement, and some other citizens and Indian Head Community Action Agency. There'll be a report will be provided for the next, so this is July, for the August meeting on the results of that meeting. Anything else? Not, this meeting is adjourned.